Paul Lovelace, and I'm the JustWare administrator from Pima County. Something interesting about me, man.
There's a lot interesting
There's
about you, Paul. Come on.
Things. Outside of work, I serve on a lot of nonprofits. I guess that's probably my interest in income.
Oh, great. Hi, my name's Heidi Henry, and I'm actually a New Dawn employee. A little bit of my history is I used to be the system administrator for the statewide application or statewide installation of JustWare for the Montana Public Defender's Office. So, welcome.
Hi, I'm Jim Bledsoe, former JustWare administrator for the city of Spokane. I'm actually in my third career. I was an F-15 fighter pilot for 23 years, went to law school, prosecuted for 12, and in the last 3 years of that, became involved with JustWare, and so now I'm going out on the road with the Western sales team where I'm needed to basically advise and consult, and it's a wonderful life.
I'm Kelleen Roseboom. I'm the office manager for the city attorney in Missoula, Montana. Say about myself is I'm not a public speaker, so feel free to grab me after this for other questions.
I mirror that sentiment. I don't talk in front of people.
Right.
It's a little late for that, right?
Why is everybody laughing? I'm Chris. I'm a solutions architect at New Dawn, so I help our PMs come up with creative ways to do stuff that you guys need. So
We're going to start off today by asking, what process have you automated in JustWare that you couldn't live without?
In Spokane, we do about 10 to 12,000 criminal cases a year with 4 staff people. So you can do the math pretty quick and figure out that building cases has to be done fairly efficiently and fairly quickly. Spokane uses a concept that we called vertical prosecution. You know, the defendant that commits the crime in January and then comes back in May and then comes back in August, sees the same prosecutor again and again and again. So what we do is we break the alphabet down by prosecutor, and that makes building cases very easy. We created a business rule that takes a look at the first letter of your last name, and when the case is created, it puts the judge that handles that defendant, the prosecutor that handles that defendant. Obviously, the defendant is already there. A placeholder for the police officer, and if it's DV, we automatically stick in a victim's advocate because they break those down as well. But you may say, well, gee, that's not the way we do things. If you don't prosecute like we do vertically and people can be assigned wherever, you can still do this basic concept with a business rule. And if you want to know how, invite me back next year and I'll... No, I can talk with you one-on-one about it. But it would be a good presentation for this venue.
Anybody else want to answer that question? What process you couldn't live without that you've automated in JustWare? Paul?
I'll go with, I already know the next question, so the problem is that the 2 automations that I couldn't live without is business rules and JDA. I don't want to answer too much into it, but just
Go
say
ahead.
that they're amazing, and I couldn't live without them. And whoever, I think, is Kenny still around? He was the JDA founder, and I don't know who came up with business rules and making it so easy to build, but whoever they are, I'll marry them.
Whoa. If anybody's willing to admit to that, Paul's got a proposal.
So right now, I have about 400 JDAs in my JustWare database. All of that is a special thanks to David Papst. I don't know if he's here today. I haven't seen him this morning yet, but I tell you, I was at a JustWare conference 2 years ago, and Sean Holliday was leading the class, and he does a great job, but I really shouldn't have been in JDA 101. And so I was like, I'm just going to go on. And so Dave came over, and he was like, you look lost. And I'm like, no, I'm not paying attention to this. And he goes, well, what are you trying to do? And I showed him, and then he was like, oh, well, check this out. We can just put in this subdocument query. And I watched him do this, and all of a sudden the screen came alive, and I was like, do that again, and do it slower. And then I just wrote it all down. And I loved it so much, I actually emailed the IT guy who was in charge of implementing our JustWare and said, if I die on the plane on the way home, you need to know this. And gave him the whole instructions, because it really is amazing. And I've only been able to build 400 JDAs because of subdocuments, because I don't have to continue to write code in every single document. A lot of it, you're just copying and pasting certain spots, the headers, the footers, being able to translate into Spanish now and using sub-documents to pull up versus English and Spanish and not having two different documents for a Spanish intro letter and an English intro letter. I mean, it's incredible, and I just think that if you aren't using sub-documents, you got to, and I think the JDA is absolutely incredible. It's so easy to use too. I mean, once you figure it out, the data source queries, if you run into problems with a data source query, call support. They're amazing. I mean, I got to give a huge shout out to support because they really do, help me when I have a data source query problem. So.
I'll just add something to what Paul had to say. First off, I just want to, as a New Dawn employee and as someone who's working with system admins, give huge props to the guy sitting next to me because he's a real innovator with the use of JustWare and the way that he uses JDA. So if you have a chance to talk to him, good luck, now you won't, yeah. If you have a chance to talk to him, please do so. But I did also want to say that it's important to know that JDA is extremely powerful even if you're not using a complicated sub-document type document. So it's important to know that if I can automate some things as simple as a case file label by simply entering, if you're still using case files, physical files, by simply entering a case, by beginning that process, I can have my notice of appearance print, I can have my case file label print, I can have my client letter, I'm speaking from the public defender side, I can have my client letter automatically print, and then it's just ready for me to go. So even when I take the time to just actually physically attach the documents into the file, my documents that are printing from JustWare are coming out. So don't be afraid to use simple, nice, easy documents like a case file label.
One area we've stepped into recently more and more is if you have one document, you have one motion, and then it takes you through into which type of motion you're going to create, whether it's a motion to dismiss, to continue. Depending on what your statute is, it will give you certain language that it fills in only for if it's a DUI. We have one transmittal that you can select which type of transmittal, if it's going to the Department of driving records or different things like that. And so rather than have a list of 10 motions, we have one motion that takes the user through it. And it's really fabulous, actually, and cuts down on the number of documents you have to look through in order to pick what you need to do.
Let's go into business rules. The business rule engine in JustWare is really powerful. Chris Burbank, I know, has a lot of experience both at New Dawn and with customers implementing business rules, maybe what the business rule engine does and what you've seen it do for customers.
Okay. The business rule engine itself can do almost anything in JustWare. Notice I said the word almost. Don't hold me to that. Anything there's a result for, which there's a lot of them. There's things missing, obviously. You can't do quite everything, but you can automate processes. So whether it's I need certain documents every single time I do X on a case. So I set it to warrant. I need all these documents printed. I need this stuff to happen on the name. I need whatever. I need things removed. I need it to copy a case. Things like that. You can also use it for validation, which is some of the really cool stuff we've done on our internal deployment of JustWare that we use to track cases for you guys. So, for example, if somebody puts a case in my queue that says, hey, Missoula City needs X, Y, and Z done, and I can't figure out how to do it. To hit my case, I require like 7 things on my case before you can even give it to me. Like, I have to know what version they're on, obviously, because if they're on 5.5 versus 5.9, I have different capabilities to help you, right? What the customer impact statement is, what the problem is, how to reproduce it, things like that. So I have a validation business rule that I'm actually just using a SQL query to figure out what is on the case versus what I require on my case. And then I'm building them a nice little sentence that says, to build an SA case, you have to have the following items. And I don't just list everything, because if I send them like 9 things, they're like, well, now they got to compare. What do I have? What do I need? See what I'm saying? So mine just lists, all right, this is what you're missing now. So if they try to add something else and save, it takes off what they've just added. So that's kind of a cool little use that we've used internally. We have a lot of examples like that, but one of the cool examples I did for Colleen, she had something similar to what Jim has on steroids. So not only does she look at the first initial of the defendant's last name, we also look at their party num on their name record, decide whether it's an even or an odd number. Stay with me here for a minute. That goes down one branch, and then we look at the first two characters of the last name of the defendant, which then flows down other branches to break down and determine randomly an attorney, their support staff, all of those things that need to happen on the case. That's all done at case creation. So, trying to think of some of the other crazy ones we've done for you.
Partner, family member assault, and then it.
She just said.
So that rule not only does all of that for assignments for us, but if it's a partner family member assault and it goes down the one side for one of the attorneys who doesn't do partner family member assaults, then it flips it over to the other attorney. So it's an amazing rule that Chris originally said could not be done.
Would I say something like that?
A lot of people think business rules and think processes, but I would suggest to you as admins that a business rule can be your best friend for keeping your database pure. In Spokane, because we're relatively small, we pretty much give everybody the ability to do anything and everything except delete the case. So sometimes you have people, I like to say, keep your hands off the red guarded switches. There's certain things you shouldn't be touching, and I don't want to go to the trouble to make them untouchable. On the security profile side, so I just wrote a business rule that wouldn't allow anyone but an admin to adjust the case receive date. All your reports run off those sort of things, at least ours do. And if someone says, we get a case in that's been in warrant for 3 years and they adjust the case receive date back to the incident date, now all my report on that is all screwed up. So I didn't like that, so I wrote a quick business rule that stops that. Wrote a quick business rule that won't allow a case to be saved without a police officer on it, because in this business rule it generates all these parties. It puts in just a placeholder, and it specifically looks at that, and if it's there, then it says, no, give me a real cop. Another one that's very handy is you create these cases and they get adjudicated, and you get put on probation. Well, that probation in Spokane is typically 1 year if it's a misdemeanor, 2 years if it's a gross misdemeanor. So I wrote a business rule that looked at what the charges are, and if there's a gross misdemeanor, it automatically sets a case review date out 2 years from now, or 2 years from the date it's adjudicated, and then when that date arrives, it sends a notice to whoever the assigned prosecutor is or was, and says, please look at me, and if I'm really ready to be closed, close me. And that way you don't have all these cases out there that are ancient, that are in some sort of a probation status or non-fully adjudicated status, and then that helps the reports for how long it really takes to get a case completely through the system. So,
some of the greatest things that you can ever find are just through a question. And I often have users come to me and say, hey, can we do this? And I'm like, no. And then someone else comes to me and asks me the same question, but it's worded differently, and it triggers my brain, and it's like, oh yeah, we could do that, and I just formulate that. So I just want to say that first and foremost, because if Chris Burbank ever said no to any of you on this question that I'm about to answer for you, I apparently had the right wording. So I don't know how many of you out there ever do level 1 and level 2 duplicate name merges and have to do, have it on a schedule, and like every Friday night, you go in and you have to merge them. Well, I got sick and tired of that, and was like, look, there's got to be a better way to do this. And I called support, and I asked the question just the right way, and I was like, look, there's the code's there. Why can't we just do this in some